Feedback. Feedback. Hi, this is Theo Broughton.
And I am Thabiti Mpinga.
Inviting you to join us each Monday at 9 a.m. for Feedback,
A positive image production by Hood Research.
Encourage others to tune in each Monday on
Comcast Detroit, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, watch WHPR TV Network anywhere.
And take us along with you. Feedback, feedback, feedback.
It's you liberals who have lifted them up, Howard.
Paul, you conservatives make a mistake. You can't afford to strangle hope in people. Without hope, people become dangerous.
No, Howard, you liberals have let them invade our society. You give them jobs, political jobs.
Paul, you missed the point. It's only the smart ones we move up.
That makes it even worse.
No, we have to move them up. If we leave a smart one in the ghetto, he might develop into a leader against us. But if we raise him up into white society, we neutralize him. He feels compelled to try to act like us. He loses his identity and his racial anger, if he has any. He becomes alien to his brothers. They realize he sold them out, and they grow to hate him. He becomes worthless to them and safe for us. No, thank you. In fact, in his love for the creature comforts, except for his color, he's become one of us.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in this morning. And for those of you who are considering sponsoring this show, please make your check or money order out to Hood Research. Or if you want to make it out to WHPR Broadcasting Company, we have no objection to that. But we do ask that you mail it to us, Hood Research, at P.O. Box 4416, Detroit 48204. Again, that's P.O. Box 4416, Detroit, Michigan 48204. I want to say good morning to all of the good people that I've been running into in the community. Oh, man, it's just every time I go out, it's just so many people we find that are tuning in to the Feedback Show right here at WHPR. So just want to say good morning to all of you. You got somebody to say good morning to?
Sister Frida Washington, Sister Jackie, who keeps me posted on so much stuff that's going on in the community. Sister Ruth Ann, who's also very active. Brother Shane, Brother Smith Bay. And I always ask you to have your family, friends, neighbors, co-workers to tune in and have pencil and paper handy for valuable information. You're going to get some very valuable information today.
That's right. And before we go to our guests, I just want to say good morning to Vera and Barbara and to Ron and to Sam and Jay. And you know, it's wonderful. Gladys and Claire and Clementine. So, anyway, I would like us to, like you all to know that our guest today is another lifetime member of Hood Research, and that's Keith Hines. And as Thabiti said, you might want to write some of this down because he has some information, seems like the Ku Klux Klan consorting, is that the right word, with the government. Thank you for joining us, Keith. He does a lot of research. Go ahead.
Yeah, sometimes maybe too much.
Yeah, pull the mic to your mouth.
The thing I want to really bring out to the public, there are laws. You know, I hear everybody complaining about things that are going on in our city. You know, we're complaining about this person did that, this person took away our rights, and this person is doing that. I'm talking about many things like the water situation, talking about property, we're talking about retirement, all these things. Well, years ago, the federal government, okay, we're talking after the Civil War, had to take and pass laws because there were a lot of people who didn't want to respect the results of the Civil War. So the federal government has laws, believe it or not, and probably the most important one is Title 42, and you can write this down. It's Title 42, USC, Section 1983.
Okay.
Okay, and what is
Title 42, USC, Section what?
1983.
Section 1983. Okay.
Okay, this is the Civil Rights Act. Okay? It's
1983 section. Okay, go ahead.
Section 1983, Title 42.
Okay.
You can pull it up, you can Google it, it's there, a whole bunch of pages. The thing is, it was also referred to as the Ku Klux Klan Act at the time because those are one of the major groups, I guess you could say, that didn't want to see African Americans progress.
Ku Klux Klan. Okay.
And it kind of, I'm going to start off the way it kind of reads, is 42 USC Section 1983, commonly referred to as Section 1983, provides every person who under color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state or territory of the District of Columbia subjects or causes to be subjected any citizen of the United States or other person within the jurisdiction thereof to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws shall be liable to the party injured in an action at law, suit in equity or other proper proceedings for redress. I guess I might as well read the whole thing. Except that in any action brought against a judicial officer for an act or omission taken in such officer's judicial capacity.
Okay, now you're going to translate that?
Okay, what I just said, I know when I read it out loud, people say, what did you just say?
That's right.
I
Translation, please.
I said you were granted rights. Okay, first of all, we have what is known as the U.S. Constitution.
Uh-huh.
Okay? That was formed so that the people of the United States of America could be protected by laws. Well, they developed the law system, which is USC, which is U.S. Code. The attorneys and the judges in the courtroom talk in U.S. Code. The judges, when they go to make a decision on a case, it has to be based not on what they so much think, but whether or not it violates a code that has already been established. What the Civil Rights Act did back then was make it possible for the blacks to be able to go to court and also have someone represent them. Even though they went home, they might have found their homes burnt down. But the federal government was at least trying to give powers and how would you say, kind of establish equality somewhat in the United States of America. Well, here in Detroit, and well, not just Detroit, here in the country, we still use those same laws. You can go on the internet now, type in 1983, you can type in Kwame Kilpatrick, and you'll get Title 18. But you can also type in other cases that are more concerned with civil rights, and you type in 42 1983. Just type in that, and you'll see tons and tons of current cases come up because it's still used. You know, by them kind of overstepping the rights and privileges of the citizens of the city of Detroit with the emergency manager, with the takeover education, even with what's going on up there in Flint. The question is, some of the things that they did, okay, was it intended or was it by accident? Was it intentional or done out of ignorance? It's probably the best way. In court, that's the way they would probably use the two terms, whether intentional or done out of ignorance.
But even if it was, if it violates that code, then the code is supposed to protect the people. We're talking about Flint. And seems like people are just ignoring some of the codes and treaties and laws and all of that and just stepping on people, doing what they want to do.
Now, would a person be in a better situation, because we know there's lawyers for real estate, you know, international law, et cetera, to have an attorney who's familiar with internet, with the U.S. the codes themselves, because the common citizen like myself has no idea. You know, I'm looking at the paperwork that you gave me, and it's something that if we knew, just like Hood Research's motto, if people would do better if they knew better. We don't even understand. I mean, this is on a grand level. I mean, we just deal with the basic things, Voting Rights Act, thing that we're familiar with and we do on a regular basis. But would a person be better served to have a civil rights attorney who's very familiar with these different titles and codes, these USC codes, to, you know, maybe act in their own behalf? Because you can get a lawyer who's not, every lawyer didn't graduate with an A. Some of them got C's, but they still got their law degree. So what would your opinion be? And then we can go to this phone call.
Well, my opinion on that would be, yes, an attorney would always be best. But if we, as a people, as the public, knew that these laws existed,
Right.
along with Title 18 USC Section 241, which is conspiracy against rights, and also another one that's very important here in Detroit is Title 18 USC Section 242, which is deprivation of rights under color of law. Now, the reason why that second one, 242, is so important is because that applies to the people in government, police officers, security guards, nursing home attendants, and it even mentions specifics like including the mayor, the city council, etc.
Abuse of power.
etc.
Okay, take the call.
okay.
Then we want to talk about color of law. Okay.
Just one real quick question.
Yes,
Conspiracy of Rights, 241. Okay. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
Happy Monday.
Hey, happy Monday.
Comcast 91 Fly Soul.
All right.
Great, excellent topic. I'm so glad. I looked it up. It said you can look up, audience can look up YouTube Title 42, Section 1983. If you YouTube Title 42, Section 1983, it will break down everything you guys bring into us. And thank you, Chief. They got something in there called filing a counterclaim in traffic court, setting up a civil lawsuit, Title 42. And what that does, when you file a counterclaim and subject matter jurisdiction, the court has 30 days to answer, or they will default. More likely, and you know, Ron Marsh was trying to tell us a lot about these titles and codes. So when you don't know that your constitutions are being violated, this is where we need to come together with some forums where we can start reading and teaching each other how to break down these codes and sections so that we know what our rights are. We can keep our mouth shut until we get to court, and then we can blow them out of the water because we know our rights. So thank you so much for this information. Again, anybody out there that needs to know, YouTube Title 42, Section 9083. And they got all kind of information where you can just sit down here and read how to fight for your rights because they're constantly violating it every day.
Right.
Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, thanks for calling. That's in 1983.
Right,
1983. Okay. Now, you mentioned color of law a couple of times. Tell us about that.
Okay, color of law, and I'll kind of read it to you so that way you know what you're going to see when you go online. Title 18 USC Section 242, and USC stands for U.S. Code. That's what the judges use in court.
In the United States codes. Okay.
Deprivation of rights under color of law. This statute makes it a crime for any person acting under color of law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom to willfully deprive or cause to be deprived from any persons those rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution and laws of the U.S. This law further prohibits a person acting under color of law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom to willfully subject or cause to be subjected any person to different punishment, pains or penalties than those prescribed for punishment of citizens on account of such person being an alien or by reason of his, her, color, or race. Acts under color of any law includes acts not only done by federal, notice I said federal, because they're also using this against our president, state or local officials within the bounds or limits of their lawful authority. Said not only, notice it said not only, said but also acts done without and beyond the bounds of their lawful authority, provided that in order for unlawful acts of any official to be done under color of any law, the unlawful acts must be done while such official is purporting or pretending to act in the performance of his or her official duties. And this definition includes, in addition to law enforcement officials, individuals such as mayors, council persons, judges, nursing home proprietors, security guards, etc. Persons who are bound by law, statutes, ordinances, or custom. It reads a little bit more, but I'm going to stop right there so not to take up the whole show. And any questions, Steele?
Well, that particular section doesn't seem to be used often enough to defend black communities. You know, here recently there was the announcement that today the city of Detroit is supposed to come out from under the, the finance committee, and I guess everybody's supposed to be so thrilled about it. However, it just seems to me that if that law had been used somewhat 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't even find ourselves in bankruptcy or the pensioners' money being stolen. They actually stole the money from the pensioners. And I'm just thinking that maybe they might be able to reopen some parts of that bankruptcy case with this information that you're sharing.
Well, if the public becomes aware that we actually do have these tools, you know, marching is great, you know, protesting is good, but that doesn't work inside the courtroom. The judge cannot rule on whether you marched or not, but he can rule on whether or not that person intentionally or unintentionally violated the federal government, the laws of the federal government.
So we need to multitask. My word for 2018. We need to multitask. And as you were saying, the marching protesting is good. That gets a lot of attention to whatever the issue is. And you definitely need attention to it because the media does a lot to hide the dirty laundry around here.
You know what I'm wondering also, because of the United States Code, the judge, it was saying the court itself is bound by whatever the code says, and it makes me think about sometimes when they have certain cases, they'll cite a case like, say, Pittsburgh versus John Williams or something like that, and those cases were precedents that establish how a particular case, you know, whether it's just to say embezzlement or whatever, they'll use that as a precedent in order to be able to say something. So I'm wondering, and then we got a couple of callers, so we getting things heated up here.
Okay.
If, because, like you say, Title 42, Section 1983, a judge is bound by that, more or less, right? So there's no interpretation of law because law has been established, and it's up for the judge to only act on what has already been set up. And again, as Theo was saying, and you know, that's what struck me is that had we known in certain cases, like with the retirees losing so many different things, and it seems like whoever represented them should have been astute. I mean, we needed you and maybe Hassan and Carl to be there as representatives, but we'll go to the lines.
That's right.
Hello, caller, you're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please? Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. This is Tyrone. I'm viewing you over the internet. Right now, since 2015, I've been fighting Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. on a misconduct by the judge, and it's only one law. That's under Title 18, Chapter 16, Section 351 to 364. When you're talking about handling those judges with the code, the judges have created interpretation they call, it's a long name, judiciary, blah, 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 blah. And what they do, they say, we are independent branch of government from the Congress. And the Congress has no business disciplining us. And that's where you use the U.S. Code against corporations. The judges are lifetime judges in federal district courts across this country. They totally violate the people's rights, such as an example. Over 4,000 cases was brought in the last 5 years against judges for misconduct, throwing cases through summary judgment. And how many won was 18. And they got to set up so that you have to go through the chief judge, the judiciary council, and then you get to impartial judges from different districts and circuits around the country. But you lose at those two steps. So we cannot just depend on, I'm telling you from experience, I'm right now fighting the case, for using U.S. codes as though those codes are some liberation. It's not. Judges, only one law, and that the law is called Judiciary Misconduct and Disability Act. That's in 1980 when they passed that act. And the judges across this district judges, federal judges, are violating that act on the pretext that they are interpreting the law, and they actually change it so that that judges are not disciplined at all. So we should not pin all our hopes in that, because I'm personally right now fighting the case against Georgetown University. Been fighting it since 2015.
Well, that's great, and I'm really proud of you. But just think, if when we did have our marches, if the people included in their statements, their conversations, when they're marching, Title 18, 242 or 241, or Title 42, Section 1983. When they're approached by a police officer, are you violating my rights granted to me by the U.S. Constitution and enforced under Title 18 U.S.C. Section 242? See, then the police officer can say yes or no, but he'll probably say nothing.
Mm-hmm. Probably don't know.
I agree with you.
Yes.
That we should know it. I use also that 241 as a discrimination clause in the U.S. Code. Mm-hmm. So I used it, but I can say this to you, just to wrap it up. We right now going to see a celebration downtown, on the boulevard, that they're going to release Detroit from receivership. But that's not true. All they're doing is dissolving that committee. But the law stays there, and I advise everybody to get the Financial Review Commission Act, Public Act 181, Section 141.1642, and it's called Dissolution, Releasing the City and School District from Oversight. Read it yourself, and they're not releasing us.
Right,
we are under oppression, and so I just want to end that to say these laws, we cannot beat them with their own law. We have to do something else.
Yeah,
okay, now.
Well, there are a number.
Thanks for the call.
There are a number of opinions, and that one is yours. There are others who believe that if we use the laws that have been put into place, and we have a committee of interested residents as well as attorneys, I think we will fare well.
And
Because that bill's hopelessness, what you're talking about.
And as we go to our next call, I just want to add something that Mr. Hines said earlier, is that this is one of many tools that we use, and him and our tradesmen, so we know of many tools that are required to get a job
Right.
done.
Yeah, he didn't say eliminate anything. We talk about multitasking, including the People's Store that's been open on the West 7 Mile at 16400. That goes a long way to build confidence and hope in the community.
Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
Good morning, fellow patriots.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Les.
That's what bothers me. When people say their law, are we not Americans? So this is our law. We
Supposed to
must
be.
fight for our laws. These are our laws. And what Chief Hines is saying is important. But as long as Public Act 436 is on the books, we are a threat for takeover any time. So until that law is off the books, we're going to be still under threat of dictatorship. That's what we should keep on saying, and I'm agreeing with Keith. We should repeat that this is a law that's un-American. When you can come in and take over the municipalities of a city, then that's called dictatorship. This home rule should be addressed for every city. Every city should be behind us when we go after 436.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
No.
436 is interesting too if you go in history, because first it was 4, and then it came back as 436.
And
Well,
no, I
Yeah,
was
this
just
been around for a
Article-
while. It was Public Act what?
It was 4.
Okay.
12 or something
It
like
was
that.
Public Act 4.
72.
And then they added
Public Act
36.
72.
Well, if you
This
think
law has
about
been on
those,
the books since Jim Blatcher's been around.
right, but if you think about those numbers, they are the exact same. There's a similar case that was here in America earlier, but it was in a treaty. It's Article 4 of the Treaty of 1836. You see what I'm saying? 436.
436.
So is that by chance, or are they sending, what do you call it, subliminal signals and words and communications out?
Well, we hit the
Well-
number, then it can hire some lawyers.
Well, I was at a forum, and I asked the Attorney General, the candidates for Attorney Generals, and the only one that came up with that's going to be somebody that will challenge this 436 was Bill Noakes. The Dana Nessel and the other candidate who's not in the race now said that they were restrained by the law. But Bill Noakes said, hey, they have been violating the Michigan State Constitution, because he read a article in the Constitution that said they were violating it. We need somebody that's going to be Attorney General that's going to challenge the law. To me, if we ain't got representatives from Detroit that want home rule, then we don't need them. That should be the mantra from here on out. If they want to represent us, they will be challenging 436 law, because if we don't challenge that, if we build our city back up again, they can come back in and take it right back and put it back in the same position they got it right now.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Correct. Thanks.
Y'all have a great now.
Thank you, brother. Now, is there anything else that, because, when I think about this, and it's actually got me where I want to actually do research, I don't even know where to begin, because, this is, I don't want to say it's complex, but there's a lot of layers to it. I'm looking at the notebook that you have. There's a lot of information in there. And if somebody violates it, like you say, the judges, you mentioned federal, state, and then you said municipal. Are these things subject to the best of your knowledge, are they subject to, if you don't get the redress of your grievances, that you can appeal this, like maybe go to an appellate court or something?
Well, every case is always different. You know how they have
Yeah.
the court system. But if you look at this being a tool, we can say, like Detroit has a charter. Okay, we can say you violated a part of the charter. But how do you enforce it? And we're back to these three things. These are the most important keys, I think, because there are a million titles, and we're talking, you ever go in an attorney's office, you see just rows and rows of books.
Right.
Okay, but what I've done is condensed it down to the three most important key players for African Americans in the city of Detroit, Flint, Benton Harbor, because there was a pattern that was played on the minorities in Michigan, and by it being more than one person that committed it, and having it been done more than two persons, and done more than twice, it it qualifies as a conspiracy.
So do you think that more than one city could come together and file a federal lawsuit?
Yes, if Detroit, Flint, Benton Harbor, and I think it was Pontiac and maybe two more, all were minority cities. They were attacked by the state saying that there were financial issues. But at the same time, there were other cities in the state of Michigan in worse condition
That did not have.
that did not get emergency management.
Right, right.
So was that ignorance or intent?
Now,
Wow.
I don't know. I know in working situations when an employee is denied rights or something, and if it spans a number of employees, you can have a class action suit. But can municipalities do that as well? Get together and have their legal departments say, okay, we jointly submit this. I don't know whether they call them briefs. Again, I'm not a legal person, but are they able to jointly, as a person would in a class action suit, where a product maybe was defective and they suffered some sort of health issue or something? Can municipalities do that?
Well, I would guess that's where more, educated attorney type person would come in. But I would guess, like say if the city of Detroit were to combine with Benton Harbor and then combine with Flint and the other cities that were affected, as the citizens, because I don't think we're going to get the mayors
To do
in
it.
all the cities to do that, because
But the
definitely
resi-
not here in Detroit.
but the
but as
residents.
the citizens, the citizens of Detroit, the
Yeah.
citizens of
Okay.
Benton Harbor, the citizens of Flint, combined. See, that's not just one city.
Right.
See, that's the more than two.
Right.
So
That's a
is
question.
it a conspiracy? Why
Right.
is it a conspiracy?
Well, I think so, but that's a good question to ask the candidates who want to be the attorney general for the state. The other thing that was reported over the weekend is the fact that Highland Park, which we call the capital of Detroit, right here where we sit, okay, had an emergency manager. Okay, now, then they had an emergency manager over the schools. And this emergency manager has somehow, with whatever influence, force, payment, etc., convinced a majority of the school board members to hire him. Okay? He's no longer the emergency manager. He is now head of the school district in Highland Park. And he likes charters, by the way, I'm told. And they are to pay him supposedly with the collaboration of the state about $120,000 a year. And yet he has done nothing for the school system in Highland Park. But the majority, I repeat, the majority of the school board members who apparently have been brainwashed, coerced, paid off, etc., threatened, whatever was used, have agreed to keep this man here. And that's to the detriment of the students in Highland Park. Craziest thing you ever heard.
We got a caller.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
Yes, I called back real fast to say, Big Les is absolutely right. If we don't fight 436, we forget when they said Detroit in 206 had control back of their school system. But then the next year, they used the same financial law, emergency law, to take back over, and you see what then happened to our school system. So I'm just saying, maybe we got to look at history and examine it. And I hear people say multitask. There has never been a multitask movement. There always one movement becomes the supreme to win Social Security, unemployment compensation, Medicare, and all those things, food stamps, and Civil Rights Act. Those was marching in the street. It was not done in the court. It was not done by lobbying. So it's never multitask. You split your force multitask and you win nothing. So we got to fight this thing in the street. We cannot fight it in court because you can get one case, a law that they instituted, and the people said, we don't like it, and they reversed it because the legislators would have to reverse it.
Okay, thank you for your input. You called enough times this morning, unless you're going to help pay for this show. In the meantime,
I'm sorry.
In the meantime, multitasking is important. Multitasking is necessary, regardless to what you think, and you are entitled to your opinion as we are entitled to ours. And if you examine what has been going on, you will know that multitasking has been used.
Now I've got a question for you, Keith. When you mentioned that the citizens of, Ben Harbor, Detroit, Flint, etc., can get together, now they would have to then, I guess, find someone who would represent, because we know sometimes when they get these class action suits against a pharmaceutical company, then you get these lawyers coming out of everywhere saying, yeah, well, have you been denied this or that, or et cetera, type of thing. So I bring that up because when, like, let's say, for instance, there is in many of the communities that we've mentioned, there's an activist type group or organization. Small as they may be, there are groups. So now, if the activist groups in Benton Harbor, Pontiac, etc., get together, they'd also have to be able to finance whoever is going to represent them legally in court. And I don't know if how viable that may be. In other words, the fact that lawyer, although some do pro bono work, they are, let's say, established enough in their own reputations or their own firms that they can do it without it because they see the principle and the righteousness of what has to be done, as opposed to looking at it as another opportunity to either get some face time or some credibility or draw some clients to them. So what are your thoughts about them being, these communities, if they were able to get the various activist groups together and then say, okay, now we're going to seek a lawyer who we know has, the best interests of the citizenship as opposed to their own personal gain?
Well, we have to be an attorney who's not afraid to take on the bad guy. And when I say bad guys, I'm talking about the BGB, which is like, they got the KGB overseas. Well, here in Detroit, in the state of Michigan, we got the BGB, Big Green Boys with Money. Okay, so that becomes an issue for a lot of attorneys because the judges are the ones that settle the cases of the attorneys. So
sometimes they're compromised as well.
Right. So if you want to win some cases, you can't make the judges mad, and the judges can't make their contributors mad. So it's kind of like a chain. If you notice back during our bankruptcy, there was a company that played a big role, Miller Canfield. Now their name kept popping up everywhere, everywhere.
As a matter of fact, Keith, to use the term that Tyrone doesn't seem to understand, multi just means more than one, many. Tasks are always part of what has to be done. And there are people who are doing different tasks. When you talk about the bankruptcy, the judges had their task to assault and undermine as much as they could and did. The lawyers had their tasks. The city employees, unfortunately, did not do as much as they should have. and most likely because they were not knowledgeable about some of the things that they could have done and should have done. And you hear about that when you listen to the Tuesday show at 9 a.m., hosted by Hassan Alim and Carl Williams. The other things that could have been done. Then you had the Miller Canfield, and then you had was the other law.
Jones.
Jones Day. Oh, Lord, Jones Day. And they made out like a fat rat in a peanut butter factory. Then you also had the emergency manager doing his task through the agreement with the governor. So there were a series of tasks that were going on. Now, you talk about, the video you were asking about lawyers who would do this. There is a lawyer currently who is filing, or has filed, not is filed, has filed a lawsuit based on that $45 parking ticket, which is illegal. Okay, and when you talk about a need to bring it out, then there are those who need to be a part of multitasking while he is filing a case against the government, city government. There are those of us who are sharing the information to the public. Okay. Now you talk about Helen Moore as an example. Now there's an example of a lot of multitasking. She has been involved in protesting. One. There has been a lawsuit filed. Two. We were involved in helping to raise money to pay the lawyer, and the person had to put together the fundraisers for that. And, you know, I don't know, it's just interesting to me that someone is always trying to throw water on a process or an issue. If it's not going his way, then it's got to be wrong. But anyway.
We got a couple of callers. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
It's like go.
Yeah.
Quickly, if you want to understand, you need to YouTube. Is our government hiding trillions of American dollars? And to look up the Capper swindle, CAFR swindle, the Capper swindle. All these documentaries are telling you about how they're shelling out your tax dollars. If you're not educated on where the money is going, this is what's paying for all this corruption that continues on and on.
Right.
Thank you for taking my call. That was paying for them double agent lawyers.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, thanks for that information. And people need to be able to research that. Next.
Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
Good morning. Hi. This is Dee Dee.
Hi,
on
Dee
my
Dee.
cell
Happy
phone.
Monday.
Great show for you. Thank you, Keith, for putting that information out there. The bankruptcy was going so fast. By the time you would read or find something, it's went past it. For example, that Form 14 that Carla and Hassan talk about, that they had this retiree sign,
Right.
and our name was not on there. And it took the judge about 3 months to make that form up. So, I agree with you guys. You've got to multitask. You've got to march. You got to research, and you got to go to court. You got to do all of the above.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
And if we don't keep talking about the various issues, then it gets past the people in the city, and it's sad because as Dee Dee was pointing out, that bankruptcy was moving quite fast. Even with the DIA, the paintings and artifacts at the DIA were underpraised to make it sound like the city of Detroit didn't have any money. And the thing that really got me was the fund that the employees paid into. It was their own personal money. Their own personal money. And the emergency manager just attacked and raped that account. And still doing it today, by the way.
We have a caller, but I just want to bring up something on a broader scale, which when you bring it back down to where we're at, it all ties in. I remember Paul Ryan and some of the people in the national offices acting as if the money we paid into Social Security, et cetera, was a gift that they gave to us, and that is we consider it an entitlement. We paid into that. So it's the same thing when we're speaking about the city workers who were deprived of many of their benefits. They act as if the people didn't put anything in there. It's like, yeah, we just had this pot of money, we was giving it to you all, and now we're just going to decide we're not going to give it to you. No, we invested in that because we were looking for a return down the line. So I see it as the same type of scenario on a local level that it is on a national level, and we better get ready for that fight as well because they're going after it.
Yeah.
No. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Would you share your name and how you're viewing us, please?
Good morning, my.
Good morning.
Your name?
Good morning, my wise progressive friend.
That sounds like Sam.
A life member.
Ah, that's right. Life member of Hood Research.
You know, we forget that I preach against the Federalist Society. They're still active.
The Federalist Society, yes.
And the full title is the Federalist Society for Law and Public Policy Study. They are still there, and they still are putting judges and lawyers and students out into the population.
Okay. Now give that name again so people who are tuned in can research it.
The Federalist Society for Law and Public Policy Studies. You know, they shorten it just to say for Federalist Society.
Federalist.
But this group was formed by Robert Neese and other conservatives and libertarians, and they're set up to combat the civil rights gains of people. Now, there's one other thing that I want to mention. When we talk about community bargaining agreement,
yes,
we ought to take a look at hold on a minute.
Take a look at what? Take a look at what?
It's a executive orders.
Okay.
Dealing with I think it's 1-1. That's what I'm trying to find it. Hold on just a second, please.
We need to have as additional people who will do research for us. Give that again. The Federalist Society. Did you find it?
I had it, but I can't find it right now. Maybe next week or on call.
All right.
Call show I'll talk about it.
Well, we definitely
but it talks about if federal funds are involved, you have to make sure a percentage of the people are represented. It's an executive order.
Okay.
And signed by Lyndon Johnson, and it still is in effect, but it's not used. It's not cited.
Okay.
And that's the problem. That is really the problem.
Well, you know, Sam, we hope that it won't be reversed by the current president, because the congressional committee, as well as the president, have been working on reversing some of the executive orders and even bills that have been put in place by the previous president, President Barack Obama. And supposedly they can only go back 6 months. However, we know that President Barack Obama has been out of office more than 6 months. So they seem to be ignoring a lot of the laws that have been put in place to protect citizens. And they've just gone wild. As some folks say, they have run amok.
Here's the executive. It's Executive Order 1 1246. The executive order 11246
Okay.
prohibit federal contractors and subcontractors and federal assisted contractors, construction contracts and subcontractors that generally have contracts that exceed $10,000 from discriminating in employment decisions on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It also requires covered contractors to take affirmative action to ensure that equal opportunity is provided in all aspects of their employment. That's the law. Community bargaining agreements should come under this law, this executive order.
Right. Is there a year attached to that? Did you say Johnson?
It was the sheet I have
doesn't say
but
what
it's
year.
during the Johnson administration.
Yeah, well, that would have been
it was signed.
65 or so. Right.
So it's still the law, though. And let's see, the regulations we got. Well, it's still the law because I checked with one of the.
Well, that's good. That's very good to know, and hopefully Sylvia has written that down as well, because we need to have as many people look up these executive orders, these United States codes, Michigan codes, and the city of Detroit has codes as well, so that we can begin to learn more about the rights that we have and share this information out in the community.
Stay strong and have a blessed day.
Thank you, Sam. Unfortunately, we are at the end of the show. But I want to thank you, Keith Hines, for joining us this morning. And I always say, it's not necessary for you to know everything. What is necessary is for you to know how to find what you need when you need it. And we always encourage you to join Hood Research, work with us, and attend the meetings we have on the second Saturday of each month, 2 o'clock, at the Dabo Center on Grand River and Wyoming, as we have others come in and share additional information with us.
Two things. One, quickly, when we speak of multitasking, one of the things that's necessary is that you make sure that you're registered to vote. Absolutely. And then when we go from there, we look at poll watchers and other people who become engaged in the voting process as well as the community and keeping them informed. And as I always say, if you want to be nothing, do nothing. But the only problem with doing nothing is you never know when you're finished.
Absolutely. And all of the information that we bring forth for consideration is to help us all make better informed decisions. We hope that you will tune in again next week.
And now stay tuned for Get in the Know with Marley B. See you next week.
Peace.